In a historic move, Israel's Knesset voted to pass a resolution that absolutely rejects the creation of a Palestinian state. Well, kind of. There is one clause in the resolution that may allow for a future Israeli government to change their minds. That being said, this is still an outright rejection of a decades-old plan that has failed time and time again. Is this the end of the world's futile attempts to create a murderous, terrorist-run state directly inside of their biblical heartland? Only time will tell. In the meantime, our organization is being accused of stealing Palestinian land in the West Bank, supporting the building of illegal settlements, and enabling violent Israelis to shoot Palestinians in the occupied territories. All false, of course, unless you count things like planting trees, harvesting grapes, and pruning vineyards as illegal. All of this and a whole lot more on today's episode. I'm Luke Hilton, and this is the Israel Guys. Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, go ahead and hit that subscribe, or if you're listening, hit that follow button. Whatever platform you're on, whatever app you're using, we would appreciate it if you'd follow us, subscribe to us, leave a comment, leave a like, hit those notifications. It really helps us out. We're fighting the algorithms all the time to bring you guys the truth directly from the land of Israel. I'm the Mount of Blessing today from the studio here in Israel's Biblical Heartland, a place that's in the news quite a bit, even though there's a war going on in Gaza, war going on in Lebanon, or the Israeli-Lebanese border. This is the center of the country, but most of the world likes to call it the occupied territories or the occupied West Bank. And it finds itself in the news quite a bit. And today, there is breaking news from Israel's parliament. The Israeli Knesset is their parliament, their seat of government. And that is, for the first time that I know of, Israel's parliament has voted to pass a resolution that absolutely rejects the establishment of a Palestinian state. Yes, you heard that correctly. Israel's longest-serving prime minister, Bibi Netanyahu, he has had many terms in office, many years in office in different positions in the Israeli government, but this is the first time he's actually supported and endorsed as a resolution that just absolutely rejects the creation of a Palestinian state. And I'll tell you, there is a very specific reason why Israel's Knesset is taking this move at this time, and we'll get into all of that. But they're probably going to make some Democrats in America mad, because Bibi Netanyahu is scheduled to go to the United States and speak in U.S. Congress and visit the White House next week. Obviously, we know Joe Biden has COVID, and now he's, quarantining? Yeah, I even forgot that word. Thankfully, he's quarantining in, I think, Delaware. So it remains to be seen if he'll be able to host Netanyahu at the White House, but he is scheduled to speak at Congress next week. There's probably going to be some Democrats and liberals that are quite mad that Israel has taken the bold step of rejecting having a terrorist nest directly in their backyard. Sorry for more like the third terrorist nest right in their backyard. They've already got Hamas in Gaza. They've already got Hezbollah in Lebanon. They've already got multiple other enemies and threats to deal with. Okay. Sarcasm aside, a little bit about Netanyahu and why he's never done this before. This resolution was not presented by him, but it was backed by many members of his party in the Knesset. He's always been somewhat on the fence regarding a two-state solution, but he's always publicly said he would support a two-state solution, because that's what you're supposed to say, right? For decades and decades, American presidents, pretty much every other country in the world leaders have all pushed for this vision of peace in the Middle East with the two states for two peoples, right? And Netanyahu has always gone along with that language. He's always publicly said something like, I support the vision of two states for two peoples, because that's just what you're supposed to say, right? If you actually want peace and you're an Israeli prime minister, then yes, you have to believe in the vision of two states for two peoples. To understand how Bibi Netanyahu really thinks, however, and how smart he really is, you have to really find and I read his autobiography. It's a book about this thick. It's called Bibi. Well worth a read if you haven't done that yet. A story about his career in politics, and it gave me interesting insight into how he thinks, even going as far back as when he was finance minister in Israel's Knesset in about 2005. He was one that pushed forward a lot of economic reform as head of Israel's finance ministry, things that were very good for the country. But many times, Bibi always ran up to this thing where he had something going, right? Like economic reform, for instance. And and that's just an example, but many times he would have a project he's passionately working on that's his high priority, whatever position he's serving in the country, and he would say, you know what, I'm willing to sacrifice on something else. And so that's probably why over the years you've seen Bibi Netanyahu say, okay, yes, we won't build more houses in Judea and Samaria. We won't grow any more settlements. We won't do this, because he has some other project that he's gotten the world to give their blessing to, as long as he promised not to build another house in Judea and Samaria. So if you understand Netanyahu, that's kind of the way he thinks. He thinks, I'll take in his mind, a smaller compromise over here if it accomplishes my goal over here. And it seems like that has happened multiple times over the years, and that's why he's always vocalized support for the Palestinian state, right? Just to keep world leaders happy. But when you get down to the bottom line, it seems like I personally do not think that he has ever thought that a Palestinian state was feasible, but he was willing to publicly support it because, again, he had more pressing issues he wanted to see put forward. And I don't think he ever really thought that a Palestinian state would happen, even if he supported the idea, because it's just not feasible. And if you've ever been here to Israel, especially if you've been to Judea and Samaria, you just know it's pretty much impossible to establish a Palestinian state in the middle of Israel's heartland. And if you did, it would be, 3 days before they started firing missiles and rockets at Israel's airport. That's just the bottom line. Okay, so what are the details of this resolution in the Knesset? It was co-sponsored by right-wing parties in both the coalition and the opposition. It was put forward by, I believe, the New Hope party. Benny Gantz, who is Israel's... he was Israel's defense minister. He's got an eye on the prime minister's seat, and he heads kind of a center-left party in Israel. He actually supported it, and he actually voted for this resolution. The resolution passed 68-9. That means there was about 43 abstentions. Most notably, Yair Lapid's party. It was a very another center-left, or let's just call them left party, because they didn't want to be perceived on either side of the aisle. They were just weaklings that didn't want to make their positions known, right? They just stayed away from the plenum in the Knesset and just ignored the vote completely. The only ones to completely vote against the resolution were the Labor Party, which is just the far left, and Ra'am and Hadash Ta'al, which are basically the Arab parties. So you have the far left and the Arab parties who hate Israel anyways, which is interesting conundrum, because you have Arabs, citizens of Israel, who are Knesset members serving in Israel's government, but they hate Israel. It's just kind of an ironic part of Israel that you have to get used to here. They voted against it. So again, the resolution passed 68-9. And I want to read you a couple of quotes, because this is really important, okay? This resolution stated that, quote, the Knesset of Israel firmly opposes the establishment of a Palestinian state west of Jordan. The establishment of a Palestinian state in the heart of the land of Israel will pose an existential danger to the state of Israel and its citizens, perpetuate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and destabilize the region. Absolutely a fact. Again, if you've ever been here, you know that very quickly. Goes on to say, quote, it will only be a matter of a short time until Hamas takes over the Palestinian state and turns it into a radical Islamic terror base, working in coordination with the Iranian-led Axis to eliminate the state of Israel. And again, you can go west of here, where I'm sitting right now on the Mount of Blessing. Go stand on the, next to the fence, which we've gone and we've filmed there before. We've showed you where, people are infiltrating into Israel. We've stood on the mountains, the overlooks. You can look down and watch the airport and watch airplanes taking off. That's inside what they want to make into a Palestinian state. Very easy to imagine that, Hamas would take over. And if not Hamas, then it would be Palestinian Islamic Jihad or Fatah or Hezbollah, Iranian agents, you name it. And they would just sit there with homemade rockets and point them right at the airport and point them right at airplanes taking off and landing. And it would be absolute suicide for the Jewish nation. Lastly, the resolution says, promoting the idea of a Palestinian state at this time, remember that, will be a reward for terrorism and will only encourage Hamas and its supporters to see this as a victory, thanks to the massacre of October 7th, 2023, and a prelude to the takeover of jihadist Islam in the Middle East. Now, that last paragraph is key because it tells us two things, right? Number one, Israel is saying they included the clause at this time, just in case a future government wants to change their mind. And number two, the reason they could pass this resolution with so much support is directly because of October 7th. We'll talk about that more in just a second.
With says, I will bring you in from the four corners of the earth, and people will know that you are my people and that I am your God.
Discover for yourself the miracle of the land and the courageous hearts of the people of Israel.
I am 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 Israel.
Visit IamIsraelFilm.com to begin your journey.
That was a clip from the amazing, beautiful I Am Israel movie. It's available now on DVD, Blu-ray, and digital download. I Am Israel is an epic film that will take you on a cinematic journey through the land of the Bible. You'll meet Jewish men and women whose very lives are a testimony to the promises of God, and you'll see with your own eyes the miraculous rebirth of the Promised Land. Screened in over 10,000 congregations worldwide, it's the award-winning film about Israel made for followers of Jesus. You can visit IamIsraelFilm.com or click that link in the description below to begin your journey today. That's IamIsraelFilm.com or click that link in the description below and pick up a copy for yourself today. So bottom line of this resolution, historic resolution that passed in Israel's Knesset, rejecting the idea and the creation of a Palestinian state, is that let's talk about the good news and the bad news. The good news is Israel has completely rejected a murderous, terrorist-supporting Palestinian state, right? And the entire country, more or less, except for Arabs and the left-wing party, is unified, more or less unified, behind the fact that they cannot reward terrorism in light of October 7th. By giving the Palestinians a state. So they're saying, if we continue with this idea of a Palestinian state, it would simply be a reward for what Hamas did on October 7th. And it would tell them, if we do more stuff like that, if we kill more Jews, more terrorist attacks in the world, will reward us by taking more land away from Israel and giving it to their enemies, right? By the way, most Israelis and a lot of Palestinian Arabs living in Gaza and Judea and Samaria actually don't support the idea of the creation of a Palestinian state. Let that sink in and think about that for a little while. And no, we don't have time to get into it. And yes, that information is supported by real polls and real surveys. Okay, the bad news on this resolution. Israel's not applying sovereignty to Judea and Samaria right now at the moment. There is a bill being introduced by Knesset member from the Likud party, Dan Iluz, to apply sovereignty in the Jordan Valley on October 7th this year, 2024, on the one-year commemoration of October 7th, 2023, and the massacre that happened. Typically, when conservative politicians and Israelis talk about sovereignty, they talk about it in stages and steps. And the Jordan Valley is always like the first phase. So if they apply sovereignty, you can almost guarantee that'll be the first place that they apply sovereignty to. So that's why this resolution is being put forward. It would be amazing if they did. And obviously, they're saying, in the one-year commemoration, that would be a time to declare to the world that Israel is stronger than ever. The Jordan Valley is a vital piece of our security and, our economics and our territory. And yes, we are sovereign here. So that would be really good. But the bad news is they're not actually talking about sovereignty in all of Judea and Samaria or East Jerusalem right at the moment. Secondly, the resolution rejecting a Palestinian state does include that phrase, at this time. Now, what I read into that is that they're leaving the door open that a future government could revert back to this decades-old, awful, horrific idea that there could be two states for two peoples that would lead to peace in the Middle East. We hope and pray that that does not happen. But yes, that clause is in there. And I would say that not everyone in Israel's Knesset is convinced that creating a Palestinian state would be a bad idea. But most of them are. And this is absolutely historic that they have passed this resolution. Altogether, it's amazing news for Israel. All amazing news for true supporters of Israel, because if you support Israel, you should support the idea that they are sovereign in the entirety of their land, including Golan, the Negev, the Gaza Strip, Judea, Samaria, all of Jerusalem, and we should definitely support that fact. And the entire land of Israel should be built in, settled in, thrived in, and developed by the Jewish people. Just quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, the electronic intifada, which you can just guess at whether, what their political viewpoint is. They wrote an article about our organization. You guys know that the Israel Guys is a part of Hayuvel that brings Christian volunteers from all over the world to help Jewish farmers in Judea and Samaria. The electronic intifada wrote an article titled, U.S. Charity Aids armed Israeli settlers. That's the title of the article, okay? And we'll link it down below if you guys want to read it. Maybe you can leave them a comment, help them to set them straight. But I just want to read you some quotes because some of it I have to laugh at. Other parts it's just sad, and it just shows so much ignorance and falsehood and propaganda from left-wing media outlets such as the Electronic Intifada. I just think if you're going to choose a name for your news organization or your website or whatever, I'm just not sure why you would choose the name that that is like naming your website after an uprising meant to slaughter as many Jews as possible. It'd be like naming your website the Electronic Holocaust. I mean, that's pretty much what they're saying here. Okay, so they start off talking about our special ops volunteer program and a lot of our volunteer programs, because we have a trip right now that has young people in Israel that are serving in various capacities. They've been putting in vineyards, planting trees, etc. The article says, quote, "Unmentioned is the contribution of such efforts in entrenching an Israeli apartheid system in the West Bank. Palestinians live there with inferior rights and increasingly are relegated to Bantustans as settlers take more and more land for themselves with Israeli government backing." And then they go on to talk about how we're helping settlers to steal Palestinian land. Quote, "It's a Wild West settler colonial reality, a variation on the false claim of a land without a people for a people without a land. And conservative Christians from the U.S., Canada," that's us, I guess, "and elsewhere are literally there for it. Participants are told they will get to experience and visit places in Israel where most people don't get to go." That's a quote from our website, by the way. "Words obscuring the discriminatory legal framework applied to Palestinians in the West Bank." Now, this one particularly really cracked me up because they said they took a quote from our website that says we're publishing or we're advertising that if you join us on a trip to Israel, you'll get to experience and visit places in Israel where most people don't get to go. And that's absolutely true because you will get to go off the beaten path. Most tour buses don't go to Shiloh where the tabernacle sat for 369 years. They don't go to Elon Moreh where Abraham stood in Genesis 12. They don't go to Bethel where Jacob had his dream about the ladder. They don't go to the Mount of Blessing where I'm sitting right now where Jesus ministered to the woman at the well. Because you know why we bring people here? It's the Biblical Heartland, people. It's where 80% of the Bible was written or occurred. You get to go places that are biblical sites and, the rich heritage that's found in Judea and Samaria. That's why we call it Israel's Biblical Heartland. Absolutely, you get to go off the beaten path and get to go places and experience things that most people don't, because it's absolutely incredible. And no one should miss out on the very heartland of Israel in the center of the country, the mountain ranges, where the 12 tribes stood when they came into the land, the Tirzah Valley where Joshua led the tribes in, Anatod, Hebron, where Amos hid in caves, the prophet Amos, where David fled from King David, where parts of the Dead Sea are, people. Do you know that? Do you know Qumran is in the West Bank? Bet you didn't know that. Okay, moving on. A couple more quotes from this article. It says, Israel is described in one Hayovel video, that's us, as a, quote, "small nation of only 7 million Jews," simply writing out of existence the 2 million Palestinian citizens of Israel. Sorry, just a slight correction here, because there are about, I think, 8 million Jews in Israel and another 2 million Arab citizens of Israel. They weren't Palestinian last time I checked. If you go back to the 1930s, there's Jews and Arabs with passports and stuff that say Palestinian on them, right? Because there's different people groups living here. But the Arabs living in Israel, there are about 2 million of them are citizens. Some of them are sitting in Israel's Knesset. Some of them are working in the hospital systems. Some of them are working as judges and law attorneys or lawyers and such. But yeah, that equals about 10 million. And then there's another 2 to 3 million Arabs that a lot of people call Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria. Most people say there's more than that. There's not, because we've gone house to house and looked and searched for ourselves, and most of the houses here are just empty because so many people have left and gone to Canada, United States, South America, et cetera, et cetera. And then the article goes on, and again, you can read the whole thing if you want, but I'm going to wrap up here, about us working in security. Quote, "The language of doing night watches on farms in Jewish communities hints at a paramilitary aspect of the visit. A young Hayuvel leader imbues such words with added meaning because he is sporting a T-shirt for concealed carry of firearms back in the U.S. The back of the T-shirt reads, 'Freedom isn't free.' The young Christian activist is doing his best to take freedom from Palestinians. Now, could not agree with the electronic intifada anymore. Freedom is absolutely not free. And yes, I carry a gun in America. I have a concealed carry permit, but it's legal in most states in the United States, and I carry a gun to protect myself and my family. No, I don't carry a gun in Israel. I'm not an Israeli citizen. But yes, we've done night watches. It basically means you are a volunteer and you go to a farm out in Judea and Samaria where they have a lot of sheep or something like that, and you get a flashlight and you take turns and you walk around and make sure nobody tries to steal the sheep. Something like that. Or you make sure a terrorist doesn't come from a nearby town in Judea and invade a family's home while they're sleeping. While the farmer gets some sleep and his wife and children, you can actually stay up with a flashlight and make sure nobody invades. And if you see something, you'll make a call to the local security. That's the type of night watches that we do, and we're proud to do. The article just goes on and on. It talks about Operation Itai, which, if you guys don't know, is a operation that we started after October 7th. We've so far raised $3.7 million for the small Jewish farms and communities in Judea and Samaria. Everything goes to non-military civilian groups here in Judea and Samaria, and we've passed out thousands of bulletproof vests, protective vests, helmets, flashlights, drones, and the list goes on and on and on. And we're still passing that stuff out even right now. But this article in the Electronic Intifada goes on to talk about how a video shows Hayvel contributing helmets and thermal drones. Actually, I don't think we haven't passed out any thermal drones to armed and uniformed individuals in a West Bank settlement for use in the illegal settlement of Psagot. Psagot is not illegal. They're completely legal. And elsewhere in the occupied territory. And one of the recipients, armed recipients, a settler from Psagot, says, quote, "With Ramallah in front of us, with the crowded neighborhoods, this is the most important thing. The drones, to see the enemy between the buildings, and huge appreciation, we'll use it." And the article says, this is an open admission from a former sniper. I don't know how they figured out that some random dude in a video is a sniper. That the equipment is planned for use against Palestinians in Ramallah by snipers targeting crowded neighborhoods. Now, I won't say anything else except I'm not a sniper. Don't know a lot of snipers. Don't know any do I know any snipers? But as far as I know, it's really hard to shoot and kill people with a helmet and a drone. Most of the time, the helmet goes on your head to protect you. And the drone, you fly it up in the sky and you see the enemy from a distance so that you can stop them, right? And drones we've passed out have already stopped attempted terrorist infiltrations. If you guys want to find out more about Operation Itai, you can visit operationitai.com. That's still going strong, and we're still passing out hundreds of protective vests, helmets, flashlights, binoculars, things like that. Guys, don't forget to pick up your own copy of the I Am Israel movie, the I Am Israel film, by clicking that link down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. As always, make sure to subscribe, by the way. As always, stop listening to lies and propaganda and connect with the real truth of what's happening here in Israel. We'll be back very soon here at The Israel Guys. I believe that our faith is in trouble. The world is attacking us from every side, and internally, many are giving in to the cultural attacks from the world or simply watering down their faith so that they're more accepted. That's why we wrote and published a book called Facing Jerusalem, God's Plan for Global Redemption. Here are a few of the critical issues that this book addresses. Western culture is attacking Christianity. Facing Jerusalem calls for a return to our faith that originated in the Holy Land of Israel. Biblical principles are being traded for prosperity doctrine. This book challenges Christians to follow the call of Jesus to rise up with bold faith in our generation. Young people are leaving the faith of their childhood. Facing Jerusalem challenges believers to make biblical principles guiding factors in our life today. Award-winning singer-songwriter Michael Card had this to say after reviewing Facing Jerusalem. He said, quote, "I worked through the manuscript and want you to know that you've done a great job taking your readers to the next level of understanding the foundation and ongoing debt we have to Israel and Judaism. After reading the book, Janet wrote this review online, quote, "If I did not already agree with the premise of the authors, I surely would be convinced of these truths after reading their book. They back up their points with many biblical quotes. I would like to share this book with all my Christian friends." You can purchase Facing Jerusalem at facingjerusalemthebook.com or click the link down in the description below. Just enter the promo code Jerusalem for 10% off. It's time to experience revival in our biblical faith, and we believe that a key ingredient to that is spiritually and physically facing Jerusalem. Go to facingjerusalemthebook.com or click the link in the description below to order a copy today. You can also get it on Amazon.